Hello, everyone. Today I'll be going over how police discretion must be limited and how the government should adopt a use of force guideline to kind of set a, a template of how force should be used when making an arrest. So, first off, I believe this would be good because it would show accountability and transparency within the law enforcement agency. This would provide a framework of evaluating officers' actions and making it easier to hold them accountable for any misconduct or abuse of power. Another reason is it would reduce bias and discrimination against the person being arrested. This would have to deal with race, ethnicity, and all that. National use of force guidelines would help reduce that. Another thing would be protecting the civil liberties of these individuals. Excessive use of police discretion can infringe upon an individual's civil rights, basically using the Fourth Amendment to protect against unreasonable searches and seizures. We did an article about this last week where two officers walked into a house to arrest a man that had permission to stay there. Not only did they just walk in and arrest him, they held guns at him and handcuffed him, then later figured out that he did have permission and they were all wrong for this. If there was a set of guidelines for the force they used and everything, maybe they wouldn't just go in and arrest him for pretty much doing nothing. They could sit down, have a conversation before they just jump on him, arrest him, handcuff, force him to the ground, pull guns out, or any of that. So the force guidelines would help the Fourth Amendment of search and seizures. Another thing would be the public trust within the community. So if the police station agency is all corrupt and there's no force guidelines and they're just beating people up to arrest them, then that doesn't really build any sense of trust within the community. So the community would stand against the police force, and that's just not how the community needs to run. If there was a set of guidelines, the community could respect it and then eventually start to build trust within the law enforcement agency. Another thing would be it would promote professionalism and set a standard for the police agencies. The use of force officers would be better equipped to make informed decisions and respond appropriately to various situations, improving the overall quality and effectiveness of policing. This is very important, and it goes along with building trust within the community, because without this standard of professionalism, there's going to be no trust within the community or society. And this varies. These laws and act of violence vary amongst different states. So I decided to compare Florida and California. And the difference was actually kind of similar, but also a little crazy that every state kind of has a different use of force guideline. So in Florida, I'll read this to you. It says a law enforcement officer or any person whom the officer has summoned or directed to assist him or her need not to retreat from the efforts to make a lawful arrest because of resistance or threatened resistance to the arrest. So the officer is justified in the use of any force which he or she reasonably believes to be necessary to defend himself or herself or another from bodily harm while making the arrest. On the other hand, California, they set a different set of guidelines, and their guideline is A law enforcement agency shall not authorize the use of a carotid resistant or chokehold by any peace officer employed by that agency. As used in this section, the following terms are defined as below. Carotid resistant means vascular neck restraint or similar resistant, hold, or other defensive tactic where pressure is being applied to the sides of the neck. That involves the risk of restricting blood flow that may render the person's unconsciousness in order to control the person. Chokehold means any defensive tactic, force option in which direct pressure is applied to a person's windpipe. So technically in Florida, you can put someone in a chokehold and take them to the ground and put your force on their neck pipe to block their windpipe. In California, you cannot. And if there is a set standard that the whole U.S. adopted, this would make it a lot easier to decide whether a police officer was acting with misconduct or if he was doing his duty in just arresting someone the proper way without getting harmed. So this goes back to the George Floyd situation, where in Florida it wasn't necessarily illegal to do what the officers did to George Floyd, but in California their set of guidelines is different, so the officer would be in the wrong. I'm not sure when California adopted these laws. I'm not sure if it was after the George Floyd instance, but I'm sure if we set a national guideline down, that national guideline would show no force to the neck or windpipe to restrict blood flow or breathing. So those are just some reasons that I believe police discretion must be limited and the U.S. government should adopt a national use of force guideline. Overall, the guidelines in law enforcement play a crucial role in promoting accountability, transparency, professionalism, and public trust. This is why I believe that we should adopt this set of guidelines.